Intro. There are places on the internet that don't behave the way they should. Websites that speak in riddles. Videos with no origin. Messages that were never meant to be found. Tonight, we're diving into the internet's most enduring mysteries. The ones no one has fully solved. Some are games. Some are warnings. And some we still don't understand. Let's begin. Cicada 3301. On January 4, 2012, an anonymous post appeared on 4chan's board. It was simple and quiet. A black image with a white message in bold letters. Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. It was signed only with a strange symbol, a cicada, and the number 3301. No name, no organization, no context. Just an invitation. First, it looked like a prank. But it wasn't long before people began to notice something strange. Embedded in the image was hidden data. Not visible to the eye, but detectable through analysis. The test had already begun. Using basic steganographic tools, users discovered that the image contained a second image, and in that second layer, a hidden message with a link to a new page. That page contained yet another puzzle. People were hooked. It wasn't a game. It wasn't an advertisement. It didn't ask for money, usernames, or passwords. It only moved forward through logic, cryptography, knowledge, and patience. With every step, it demanded more from its solvers. More intelligence, more cultural awareness, more time. Those who followed it closely began to realize whoever had created this test was not just intelligent, they were methodical and very serious. The second stage of the puzzle introduced new layers of difficulty. Clues were hidden using increasingly obscure techniques. PGP encryption, outdated cipher methods, and references to classic literature. One part led users to a quote from William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. Another part embedded a phone number in the code, a real number which, when called, played a robotic voice. Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 together and add a .com at the end. That calculation led users to another web page, again created just for this puzzle. There were no ads.
No sponsors.
Only riddles. The deeper people went, the clearer it became. This was a global effort. The puzzle scope began to expand beyond the internet. After several days of solving complex tasks involving prime number theory, file hashes, book ciphers, and references to philosophical works, a set of GPS coordinates appeared. They pointed to real places. One in Warsaw, another in Seoul, one in Seattle, others in Paris, Sydney, Moscow. Some of the coordinates were in residential neighborhoods, others near universities or train stations. Brave solvers who lived nearby decided to investigate, and what they found was something that shocked even the most skeptical observers. At each location, taped to poles or street signs, were real posters, cleanly printed, marked with the same cicada symbol, and another message, a new QR code. Someone had physically gone to these cities and placed those signs with precision timing. It was no longer a digital puzzle. It was real, coordinated, international. It wasn't a joke. The posters led to yet more steps in the puzzle. New codes, new references. Solvers had to understand everything from Linux shell scripting to classical poetry, from the structure of the Tor network to steganography inside audio files. Progress slowed. The number of participants dropped. But a small group pressed on. They formed encrypted chat rooms, worked together, verified each other's steps. It wasn't a race anymore. It became a filtering process. Many stages required individual submission. A message would appear. Only the first few to solve this step will proceed. Others would be locked out. Those who completed certain levels were invited into private email conversations. What happened beyond that point, no one knows for certain, because then, suddenly, it all stopped. After about a month of activity, a final message appeared. We have found the individuals we sought. It is done. Until next time. The website hosting the last puzzle went offline. The images disappeared. And Cicada 3301, whoever they were, vanished. No explanations were offered. No follow-up was posted. None of the supposed winners ever came forward publicly. The trail went cold. But in that month, January of 2012, the internet had witnessed something unusual. A game that didn't call itself a game. Puzzle with no prize. A test whose rules were never stated. It appeared from nowhere, demanded intelligence and discipline, and then dissolved quietly, like it had never existed. People kept searching for more clues in the aftermath. They combed through archives, old pages, backup files, IRC logs. But the message was clear. If you didn't solve it in time, the door had closed. Cicada 3301 had come and gone. No one knew who they were, and no one knew if they would return. 858. Reddit mystery. In the early days of Reddit's rise, amid the chaos of memes, heated debates, and trending threads, a peculiar user emerged in one of the platform's more obscure corners. On March 14, 2011, a new Reddit account was created under the name A858, as it became known. Without introduction or explanation, the account began posting strings of cryptic characters. Long, complex sequences, often dozens or even hundreds of characters at a time. No words, no context, no titles, just blocks of seemingly meaningless code. At first, no one paid attention, but the posts kept coming. Every day, sometimes several times a day. Each one dropped into a subreddit created by the same user, 858. The pattern never broke. The content never changed. Just pure, silent encryption. Reddit users started noticing. What is this? Who is writing it? Why? The subreddit itself was tightly controlled. Only A858 could post. Comments were locked. No interaction. It felt like standing outside a sealed building, watching encrypted documents being slipped through a mail slot, and never knowing if someone on the other side was receiving them. Speculation began to spread. Some thought it was a bot malfunctioning. Others believed it was an art project or some elaborate joke. But a few took it seriously and started trying to decode the messages. And in some cases, they succeeded. One of the first major breakthroughs came in 2014. A group of hobbyist cryptographers began analyzing the format of the posts. They noticed patterns that suggested hexadecimal encoding, a base 16-number system often used in computing. By converting the strings from hexadecimal to ASCII characters, and then further through base conversions and symbol mapping, some posts began to reveal partial text. A few decoded messages appeared to be dates, military times, or references to obscure places. One message translated to, "The purpose of this subreddit will never be disclosed." Another, "We are not what you think." Still others seemed even more cryptic after decoding than before. Some messages were just lines from books. One was a passage from a 1970s science fiction novel. Another matched a paragraph from a rarely cited academic paper on quantum physics. There was no pattern to what was being decrypted, and no consistency in meaning. The messages, even when readable, raised more questions than they answered. And the posts kept coming. Years passed. 858 never responded, never interacted, never acknowledged any of the decoding efforts. Reddit users formed Discord servers, collaborative spreadsheets, GitHub repositories. They shared tools, screenshots, conversion tables. Some spent months working on individual messages. They noticed that the frequency of posts would change, sometimes multiple per day, sometimes silence for weeks. But always, eventually, the strings would return. Some users tried messaging the account directly. No replies. Others reported seeing the account online, only for it to vanish again seconds later. There were no leaks, no confirmations, no slip-ups. Whoever or whatever was behind the account remained in absolute control. And then, in April of 2018, something unexpected happened. The account stopped posting. Without warning or fanfare, the steady stream of encrypted messages came to a halt. The subreddit went quiet. For over a year, there was nothing. People speculated that it had ended, that whoever ran it had moved on, that maybe the purpose, whatever it was, had been fulfilled. But on January 1st, 2019, A858 returned. Another post, another sequence of characters. No comment, just a quiet signal that the puzzle was still alive. The mystery had resumed. Despite over a decade of existence, the identity behind A858 remains unknown. No group has claimed responsibility. No known organization has been connected to it. The content of the messages, even the decoded ones, offers no clear motive or pattern. There are no links, no references, no signatures. Only encryption, only silence, only the slow, steady rhythm of messages, appearing one after another, like whispers in a forgotten language, dropped into the void of the internet. To this day, new posts still appear occasionally. New attempts to decode them continue. And yet, the wall of encrypted data stands, undisturbed. Not a story, not a campaign, not a game, just a message, for someone, or perhaps no one at all. Lake City Quiet Pills. It began with a death. In July of 2009, a Reddit user known as 2-6, also referred to by his username Religion of Peace, stopped posting. He was known for his gruff tone, military-style commentary, and habit of responding to image posts with sharp remarks and stories about combat and weapons. He often claimed to be an older veteran, someone who had seen things and preferred not to elaborate. Shortly after his disappearance, another Reddit user, going by the name Milo, posted a message announcing that 2-6 had passed away. He added that he had been helping 2-6 run an image hosting site and would be handling the online assets from then on. Most took it as a simple farewell, a quiet end to a quiet man. But one user decided to look deeper. Milo had mentioned an image hosting site. When people searched for it, they found a plain, outdated webpage with a strange name, Lake City Quiet Pills. The homepage was simple. No graphics, no design. Just a functional upload system and a short, unsettling tagline at the top of the screen. Dispensing Lake City Quiet Pills to lousy bastards in need of permanent rest since 1968. At first glance, it looked like a joke. Maybe some kind of dark humor from an ex-soldier. But the name itself raised questions. Lake City is a real location in Missouri, home to a U.S. military ammunition plant. And the term quiet pills has sometimes been used as a euphemism for bullets. People began digging further. One user decided to view the site's source code, the raw HTML behind the page. Hidden there, buried within comment tags, was something no one expected. Strings of plain text that looked like job listings. These weren't normal jobs. The messages were short, blunt, and coded. They mentioned roles needed for quick runs, asked for fluent speakers in multiple languages, and listed time frames and regions. Europe, the Middle East, Asia. Some referred to no kids, no wives, or clean weekends. The tone was logistical, professional, cold, and these messages weren't visible unless you knew where to look. They had been sitting quietly behind the website, changing over time, unnoticed by regular visitors. What had started as an obituary now looked like a message board for operations. People began archiving everything, every version of the page, every comment, every line of code. They returned to Reddit, searching for old posts by 2-6. They found more references to jobs, to cleaning up messes, and to vague military activities. In one comment, he described himself as someone who had worked quiet since the 60s, adding that he didn't take contracts involving children or family members. In others, he gave brief advice about handling firearms and disposing of problems. The online persona matched the tone of the hidden postings. Then came something that shifted the investigation into deeper territory. In January of 2010, one of the hidden messages included a detailed event schedule. It listed setup teams, security shifts, transportation windows, and an exit debrief. It referred to a VIP party, noted specific dates in mid-January, and requested additional personnel. Around the same time, a senior member of a Middle Eastern political organization was assassinated in a hotel room abroad. News agencies reported the operation as unusually well organized, involving forged documents and a team that entered and exited the country with military precision. Some internet users noticed the overlap in timing between the event and the job listing on the site. It was not proof of anything, but it raised concern. The suggestion that a public-facing website, hidden in plain sight, could be coordinating global operations was disturbing. And then, just as quietly as it had started, the site began to change. The hidden text stopped updating. The image hosting function remained, but the back-end messages froze. Within months, the website itself went offline. The Reddit accounts involved 2 to 6, Milo and others, went silent. No public statement was ever made. No individual stepped forward to explain what the postings meant or who they were for. There were no confirmed links to any organization, no legal action, and no clear answers. What was left behind were archives, lines of dry, coded logistics referencing travel, language skills, payments, timelines. Each message carefully worded. Each update quietly added to a forgotten site that few had ever heard of before a user's death drew attention to it. The deeper people looked, the colder the trail became. And whatever was once behind Lake City quiet pills, it left no trace. Markovian, Parallax, Denigrate. In 1996, the internet was still young. The World Wide Web had only recently become accessible to the general public. Most online communication took place in forums and newsgroups, decentralized message boards connected through a system known as Usenet. Usenet was chaotic. It was organized by topic, but it lacked moderation. Anyone could post anything, anywhere, at any time. Among the tens of thousands of daily messages, one post slipped through unnoticed. At first, it was titled Markovian, Parallax, Denigrate, and its body was a string of random, incoherent words. Evade, imagine, befalling, ounce, chisel, suppressing, discerning, deciphered. There were dozens of them. Nonsensical, out of context, grammatically broken. At first, it looked like spam, the kind that clutters message boards. But then, over time, researchers noticed something strange. This wasn't an isolated post. Variations of the same message with the same title appeared again and again across multiple newsgroups. Different users, different accounts, but always the same kind of content. Each post was filled with disjointed words and phrases, seemingly random, yet following a kind of rhythm. And always it was labeled Markovian, Parallax, Denigrate. That name would become one of the most enduring unsolved internet puzzles of the early digital age. The messages were mostly ignored at the time. Usenet was flooded with junk, random text generators, broken bots, accidental posts from university servers. But years later, internet historians revisiting archived Usenet data stumbled upon the name again. And they began to ask, what was it? The name itself was unusual. Markovian likely referred to Markov chains, a statistical model that uses the probability of past states to predict the next. Markov chains are often used in computational linguistics, especially in random text generation. Parallax is a concept from astronomy, the way an object appears to move when viewed from different positions. Denigrate means to criticize unfairly or damage the reputation of something. Together, the three words formed a phrase that sounded scientific, even poetic, but made little sense. It didn't match the structure of any known academic paper, project, or software system from the time, and no one had ever explained its origin. What caught the attention of researchers was how often the phrase appeared, not once or twice, but repeatedly, across unrelated topics and discussion boards. Politics, science, literature, sports, all had been hit with these strange word salad messages. Something or someone had gone to great lengths to push these posts through the system. Early attempts to trace the source of the messages led to a name, Susan Lindauer. Her name had appeared in the metadata of one of the Usenet posts. For a time, internet sleuths assumed she was connected to the mystery. But this theory fell apart quickly. Susan Lindauer was a real person, a former journalist and ex-government liaison who would later become publicly known for controversial claims about intelligence work in the lead-up to the Iraq War. However, by 1996, there was no evidence that she had ever posted on Usenet or that she had any technical background involving random text generation. The inclusion of her name was likely a coincidence, the result of an old email address being spoofed or misused by a third party. Still, the connection distracted researchers for years as conspiracy theories grew around her and the messages. In reality, the trail ended there. Some believed the messages were produced by an early Markov chain generator, an experiment in machine-generated language. In the mid-90s, it was common for students and hobbyists to test random sentence generators based on simple algorithms. These tools often used existing text sources, books, news articles, or encyclopedia entries, to create new strings of grammatically plausible, but meaningless, language. If this was the case, Markovian Parallax Denigrate might have been a test gone wrong, a bot unleashed without supervision, posting endlessly across Usenet until it was noticed. But even this theory has gaps. The messages were not completely random. Their vocabulary was varied but specific. Certain words repeated. Certain rhythms returned. And no known bot or generator from that era has been proven to match the style exactly. Some experts argue that the repetition and phrasing suggest intentional design, not accident. Others suggest it could have been a steganographic tool, meant to hide messages within nonsense, using word placement or frequency as a key. But no one ever decoded it. In the years since, the internet has changed. Usenet faded. Forums evolved. New mysteries appeared and vanished. But Markovian Parallax Denigrate remained, a digital fossil, buried in the earliest layers of online communication. No one ever came forward to claim responsibility. No project or paper has ever been linked to the phrase. No one has recreated the message structure in full. And no decoded version has ever explained what the messages were trying to say. Today, the posts are still archived in public datasets, preserved in internet history. They stand as a reminder, even in the earliest, most chaotic days of the web, before social media, before mass surveillance, before algorithmic feeds, there were signals lost in the noise. Some of them never came back. Webdriver Torso. In March 2013, a YouTube channel was quietly created under the name Webdriver Torso. At first, it seemed unremarkable. The account had no profile image, no channel description, and no social presence. Then the uploads began. Every few minutes, a new video would appear. Each one was almost identical. A 10-second clip showing a series of red and blue rectangles sliding across a white screen, accompanied by a short burst of electronic tone. The rectangles would change position and size with each video, and the tones would vary slightly in pitch. Each file was named in a consistent format, tmp.mp4, with the number incrementing sequentially. There was no human voice, no commentary, no titles, thumbnails, or explanations. Just a relentless stream of geometric shapes and synthetic sounds. Within days, hundreds of these videos appeared, then thousands. Eventually, the channel would upload over 400,000 clips. The internet took notice. At first, people assumed it was a glitch, maybe a bot gone haywire or a forgotten developer's test. But the scale and consistency of the uploads suggested something more deliberate. Each video followed a near-identical structure, with only small differences in shape, movement, and tone. Then researchers noticed that one of the videos broke the pattern. Unlike the others, it didn't contain colored rectangles. Instead, it showed a man running up the steps of the Eiffel Tower, accompanied by a watermark that read "Mate is highly intelligent." That one video vanished soon after discovery, but it changed the tone of the investigation entirely. Speculation exploded. Some theorized that Webdriver Torso was part of a spy network, a modern form of the Cold War-era number stations, which used shortwave radio to transmit coded information through sequences of numbers or tones. Maybe this was the digital equivalent, an encrypted language masked as geometry and audio. Others believed it was connected to Google's internal operations, perhaps a secret testbed for video compression algorithms or automated upload pipelines. This theory gained traction when it was discovered that the account was linked to a verified Google Plus profile registered in Zurich, Switzerland, where Google's European engineering teams are headquartered. The name itself, Webdriver Torso, seemed to reference Selenium WebDriver, a tool commonly used by software engineers to automate browser tasks for testing. Torso was harder to explain, but it could have referred to a template or base object used in programming. Still, no official explanation appeared for more than a year. Online forums like Reddit and 4chan launched full-scale investigations. Some users downloaded and analyzed thousands of the videos, looking for patterns. They broke apart the audio to search for hidden messages in the frequencies. They tracked IP addresses, channel metadata, and YouTube's server behaviors. Others began to question if there were alternate uploads hidden from the public, or private videos used for covert communication. Theories multiplied: a recruitment tool for a secret society, a test for alien communication, a hoax performed by an avant-garde artist, even a form of AI communication learning in plain sight. But as interest peaked, so did the need for answers. In mid-2014, the mystery caught the attention of the mainstream media. Journalists at outlets like Ars Technica and the BBC contacted Google for comment. Eventually, Google responded. The company explained that Webdriver Torso was an internal YouTube test account, used to measure video quality across different regions and devices. The colored rectangles and tones were algorithmically generated, allowing engineers to monitor how compression, resolution, and bitrate affected playback. The strange Eiffel Tower video, they said, had been a playful Easter egg by a team member. In other words, it wasn't a mystery. It was quality control. And just like that, the story appeared to be over. But not everyone accepted the explanation. The scale of the uploads, hundreds of thousands of files, seemed excessive for internal testing. The use of YouTube as a platform for these uploads, rather than a private or sandboxed environment, raised questions. Some noted that the videos were accessible to the public the entire time. Others argued that the secrecy around the channel and the vague wording of Google's statement only deepened the mystery. If this was just testing, why upload so many? Why label them in such a uniform way? Why leave them online for years? In the following months, uploads slowed. Then, by late 2015, they stopped entirely. The channel remained online but dormant. Its videos, thousands upon thousands of colored rectangles and synthetic tones, became a monument to the internet's capacity for curiosity and paranoia. Today, Webdriver Torso is widely accepted as a testing artifact, one of the strangest public-facing engineering tools ever created. But its mystique persists. Even with a plausible explanation, the sheer weirdness of its presentation, the scale of the operation, and the brief human anomaly in its archive continue to fascinate researchers and digital archaeologists. It is a reminder that in the age of algorithms and automation, not all mysteries are born from conspiracy. Some are built for machines and only accidentally witnessed by humans. Unfavorable Semicircle. In late 2015, a new YouTube channel appeared under the curious name Unfavorable Semicircle. At first glance, it was utterly nonsensical. The channel had no description, no branding, no links, no public face of any kind. Just hundreds, and soon tens of thousands, of strange videos all uploaded in rapid succession. Their titles were cryptic strings, seemingly random combinations of numbers, Unicode symbols, and astrological signs. No language, no pattern. Each video was different, yet all followed a certain eerie logic. Low-quality static, flickering, warped images, harsh, distorted audio, sometimes abstract shapes, sometimes total blackness. Some were only a few seconds long. Others stretched past 5 hours. There was no explanation, no context, no reason. The name itself, Unfavorable Semicircle, felt like a poetic error, as though part of something more complete that had been lost in translation. It didn't seem like a name someone would give their creative project. It sounded more like something an algorithm might invent by accident. And that's what pulled the internet in. First, no one paid attention. YouTube is filled with strange content, broken uploads, abandoned test videos, random user activity. But as the channel grew, so did its reputation. People began documenting its behavior, cataloging the videos, searching for patterns. The channel would sometimes upload hundreds of videos per day, each more incomprehensible than the last. Reddit communities like r/creepypasta and r/unresolved mysteries took notice. Users formed dedicated threads and began collecting data, trying to decode file names, spectrogram audio, and dig into the source of the videos. Some noticed that many videos were completely silent, while others contained garbled speech-like sounds buried under layers of noise. There were fragments of melody, broken chords, minor tones, unsettling repetition. When run through spectrographic tools, Some of the audio revealed jagged, almost deliberate shapes. Others hinted at voices or maybe digital mimicry of voices. There were even rumors that one of the videos contained a pixelated face, distorted almost beyond recognition but humanoid in shape. It all felt deliberately obfuscated, as if someone or something was hiding meaning beneath madness. Theories emerged, and they were extreme. Some believed the channel was the creation of an outsider artist suffering from mental illness, uploading a chaotic stream of thoughts directly to the public. Others thought it was a form of AI testing, a neural network trained on abstract video and audio, left running with minimal human oversight. The idea of it being a recruitment tool similar to the Cicada 3301 mystery also surfaced. Maybe there were codes embedded in the noise, a puzzle that only the most dedicated could solve. A more disturbing theory involved psychological experiments. What if the videos were designed to desensitize or provoke certain neurological reactions, to overwhelm or disturb? Some noted that watching too many in a row induced a kind of disassociation, a nauseating digital vertigo. Then came the suggestion that it might be a dead man's switch, a kind of automated archive set to dump massive amounts of data publicly in case someone was silenced. The incomprehensibility of the data would protect its contents from casual viewers while still releasing it into the world. And yet, no theory explained everything. Who would upload this much data? Why would it all be public? Why go to such lengths to ensure no one understood any of it? Then, without warning, the channel disappeared. In early 2016, YouTube quietly terminated Unfavorable Semicircle for violating terms of service. No announcement, no takedown notice, simply vanished. This only intensified the mystery. Some believed the channel had finally broken some threshold of suspicion, that it had been part of a covert operation and had been shut down deliberately. Others were convinced that the channel had been an experiment by YouTube itself to monitor how users responded to unknown stimuli, and that, once discovered, it had been taken offline. Whatever the reason, the thousands of strange videos were gone. All that remained were downloaded fragments saved by online investigators and a scattering of archived discussion threads. No one ever stepped forward to claim responsibility. No official statement was ever released. The identity, or even the purpose, of the channel's creator remains completely unknown. In hindsight, the story of Unfavorable Semicircle raises more questions than it answers. It wasn't a hoax in the traditional sense. It didn't pretend to be something else, didn't bait with titles or images. It didn't try to scare or impress. It just existed, quietly, aggressively, repetitively, thousands of videos, no audience, no reason. It's rare for a digital mystery to leave behind so little trace. In a world where most viral phenomena quickly reveal themselves as marketing campaigns or artistic stunts, Unfavorable Semicircle stood apart, stripped of context, origin, and outcome. Even now, years later, it remains one of the most impenetrable examples of digital noise with a human shadow. Not because of what it said, but because it said nothing for so long and with such precision. 11BX 1371. On October 12, 2015, a mysterious package was delivered to the offices of GadgetZZ, a small Swedish tech blog. Inside the padded envelope was a blank DVD. No note, no return address, just one disc with handwritten symbols and a USB logo drawn in black ink. The editor, puzzled, inserted it into his computer. What he saw would soon ripple across the internet, sparking mass confusion, cryptographic analysis, and a genuine sense of unease. It wasn't just strange. It was surgical in its eeriness. The video, labeled 11BX 1371, was just under 2 minutes long. No voice, no narration, just a figure in a plague doctor costume, black robes, gloves, and a beaked white mask, standing silently in an abandoned building. Behind them, broken windows, cracked walls. No sound but a rhythmic digital buzz. The figure raises one hand and points toward the viewer, then extends the other, revealing a blinking light. They make slow, deliberate gestures, almost mechanical. The screen flashes irregular patterns. The audio buzz intensifies, feels like watching a dream go wrong. And it was only the beginning. Within hours of publication, the internet reacted. not with laughter or confusion, but with alarm. Something about the video didn't feel performative, it felt designed, layered, dense with intention. Reddit users, 4chan analysts, cryptographers, amateur decoders, everyone wanted to know what this was, who sent it, what it meant, and what it was hiding, because it was clear from the start, 11BX1371 wasn't just a video. It was a puzzle. Embedded in the visuals were Morse code, binary sequences, frame-by-frame anomalies, and spectrograms. Audio that, when run through analysis tools, revealed images and symbols, skulls, coordinates, Latin phrases. Some of the decoded phrases were chilling. One spectrogram revealed the words, "You are already dead." Another sequence of hexadecimal code translated to, "We are the antivirus." There were coordinates pointing to real-world locations. One near a hospital in Poland, another near the White House. Other embedded text referenced gruesome concepts like torture, dismemberment, and death. Some decoded visuals showed distorted faces, one of which resembled a woman screaming. Others interpreted the video as a threat, perhaps directed at journalists or governments. No part of the video was accidental. Every frame, every flicker, every sound calculated. Designed to contain hidden data. The name itself, 11BX1371, became a point of obsession. Was it a file code? Project label? A military reference? Some believed it was a date. Others thought it was a key to the cipher. Dozens of collaborative threads popped up online, with digital sleuths cross-referencing clues from the video with historic events, cryptographic standards, and hidden web services. It became a kind of open-source obsession, a mystery everyone wanted to solve. And yet, no one could determine the core truth. Who made it? Why? Was it political? Artistic? A threat? A test? Then came a twist. Weeks after the video went viral, an anonymous user posted on Reddit, claiming to know the origins. They said it was part of an art project, and that the plague doctor was an actor, filmed in Zofioka, an abandoned psychiatric hospital in Poland. This matched what others had already deduced, based on architecture and decay patterns in the background. Eventually, a man named Parker Warner Wright came forward, claiming to be the original creator of the video. He released a follow-up, 11B31369, with similar structure and style, seemingly to prove authenticity. But not everyone accepted his story. Some argued that Wright was taking credit after the fact, that his video was a copy, not a continuation. Others believed that the original was crafted by someone else entirely, and Wright merely mimicked the format. Even if he had made it, the question remained, why such darkness? Why the overwhelming presence of death, disintegration, and threat? Wright insisted it was a commentary, an abstract metaphor about human society and control. But many found that explanation unsatisfying, too vague for something so surgically constructed. The deeper the community dug, the less they understood. There were theories that 11BX1371 was a modern form of Cicada 3301, a recruiting puzzle for elite cryptographers or intelligence agencies. Others thought it might be a testbed for psychological operations, to study how people respond to encoded threats in multimedia form. Some suggested that the spectrogram messages were added later, after the video was released, by someone attempting to inject horror into an already cryptic artifact. But that didn't explain everything. The file metadata, timing, and complexity suggested a single source, someone fluent in visual encoding, audio engineering, symbolic language, and aesthetic control. This wasn't made in an afternoon. It was engineered. Even the choice of the plague doctor figure felt deliberate. Historically associated with death, disease, and misguided medicine, the image evokes helplessness in the face of something unknowable. In the context of this video, it became a symbol not of healing but of warning. Years have passed since 11BX1371 first appeared, and yet the questions remain unanswered. Was it a threat? A puzzle? A test? Was it political commentary or psychological warfare? Was it a solo artist or something far more organized? In the end, the power of the video lies in its ambiguity. It offers no context, no face, no brand, no product. Just signal, cold, precise, and unnerving. something meant to bypass reason and reach deeper into our primal instincts. What made it viral wasn't the fear it generated, but the feeling that something was happening behind the curtain, that this wasn't for show, that it was never meant to be found. And yet, here it was. Among all of the internet's unsolved mysteries, 11BX1371 stands apart, not as the loudest or the most viral, but perhaps the most calculated. A dark mirror, reflecting something that can't quite be named, but refuses to be forgotten. Publius Enigma, Pink Floyd Mystery. In the summer of 1994, Pink Floyd was in the middle of their massive Division Bell World Tour, playing to sold-out stadiums across Europe and North America. The album had been released just months before, filled with themes of communication, isolation, and lost meaning. It was elegant, atmospheric, and in many ways introspective, a sonic meditation on human disconnect. And then, the message appeared. It was a simple Usenet post. June 11, 1994. The group, alt.music.pinkfloyd, a lively corner of early internet fandom. The subject line read, "My friends, you have heard the message Pink Floyd has delivered, but have you listened?" It was signed Publius. The message that followed was strange, calmly worded, intelligent, cryptic. A puzzle lies hidden within the Division Bell. It is a puzzle of great magnitude. It has been concealed carefully and deliberately. I cannot tell you more, for I must remain anonymous. The Division Bell has rung. The enigma is in motion. No fanfare, no link, no visual aid, just text. And with that, the Publius Enigma was born. The timing was uncanny. The band was at the peak of their late-era success. The internet was still in its infancy. A strange, text-based realm filled with curiosity and low fidelity. So when someone claiming secret knowledge appeared, speaking in riddles about hidden messages and deliberate puzzles inside the new album, fans naturally responded. Some laughed. Some dismissed it as trolling. But others listened. A second message followed days later. Then a third. Publius insisted that an elaborate enigma had been embedded in the album, its artwork, and its themes, and that solving it would lead to a reward, a tangible one. And then came the moment that changed everything. On July 18, 1994, during a Pink Floyd concert at Giant Stadium in New Jersey, the lights on the stage's front flashed a single word in massive block letters. Enigma. There was no announcement, no explanation, just those 7 letters, clearly, undeniably displayed in lights. Witnesses snapped photos. Fans on the Usenet group went into overdrive. This wasn't internet rumor anymore. This was real. It meant that someone, either a member of the band, their management, or a group with backstage access, was in on it. Publius wasn't bluffing. The message had reached the real world. What followed was a storm of speculation. Fans began scouring everything related to the Division Bell. The album's lyrics were dissected. The cover art, showing 2 giant metallic heads facing each other in an empty field, was analyzed frame by frame. The inner booklet, the liner notes, even the tour visuals. The themes of the album aligned too perfectly with the idea of a riddle. Communication, miscommunication, hidden meaning, duality, distance. The band members, however, remained mostly silent. David Gilmour was asked repeatedly about the enigma, but denied any direct knowledge. In one interview, he brushed it off as some sort of hoax someone at the record company dreamed up. But was it really? Because EMI, the band's label, never claimed credit either. Nor did anyone in the touring crew. Publius himself continued to post, never revealing his identity, but always maintaining a tone of quiet authority. The enigma is not a hoax. It is real. It has a purpose. There is a prize. He spoke in absolutes. Always calm. Never inflammatory. He didn't argue. He didn't engage in drama. He simply guided. Over time, theories emerged. Some believed that the Division Bell contained mathematical or cryptographic structures. Others suggested that each track title, from Cluster 1 to High Hopes, was a piece of a cipher. Some tried matching lyrics to historical events. Others thought the 2 stone heads on the cover were communicating telepathically. Fans formed digital teams, launching websites devoted solely to the enigma. Pages with thousands of words, hypotheses, and speculative keys. But nothing ever fit. Nothing clicked. The final solution, if there was one, never materialized. In 1995, the enigma seemed to go dormant. Publius stopped posting. The trail went cold. And what remained was silence. Over the next 2 decades, the mystery took on a mythic tone. Was it a marketing experiment? A psychological game? A failed treasure hunt? Or something more abstract? A statement about meaning itself? In 2002, a former Columbia Records art director claimed in an interview that Publius Enigma had been planned by EMI, intended as an experimental promotional campaign. According to him, the project had internal support but no real endgame. A puzzle without a true solution. A mood, not a map. But that raised more questions than it answered. Why go to the trouble of coordinating a live concert display? Why insist on a prize? Why maintain such a tone of control and credibility? And if it was abandoned, why? Later interviews with David Gilmour and Nick Mason acknowledged that someone at EMI may have started it without the band's knowledge. But even they seemed unsure. The deeper the questions went, the more the answers became absent. To this day, no one has claimed the prize. No one has definitively solved the enigma. And no one, not Publius, not EMI, not the band, has offered a full explanation. The posts remain. The concert footage remains. The fan pages, archived and frozen in time, are digital fossils of a unique moment when art, internet culture, and obsession collided. Whether the enigma was a corporate experiment, a philosophical statement, or simply a riddle that never had a solution, it succeeded in one thing: it made people look closer. At the music, at the meaning, at each other. In that sense, maybe it wasn't a puzzle meant to be solved, but a mirror placed in front of one of the most enigmatic bands in rock history, at the dawn of the digital age. Because sometimes the mystery is the message. Toynbee Tiles. They appeared silently, with no warning, no announcement, and for many years no explanation. Mysterious tiles, embedded directly into the asphalt of busy city streets. Hundreds of them spread across more than 24 cities in the United States, and even a few international locations. Always made from the same strange material, linoleum and asphalt compound. Always pressed flat into the pavement. And always bearing some version of the same eerie message. Toynbee idea in Kubrick's 2001 Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter. For decades, commuters stepped over these cryptic words without understanding, or even noticing, the message beneath their feet. The mystery of the Toynbee Tiles is one of the strangest unsolved urban puzzles of the 20th century. A blend of street art, fringe science, science fiction, and obsessive secrecy. It's a story that crosses genres, cities, and generations, and its origin is as strange as its message. The earliest known tile appeared in Philadelphia sometime in the early 1980s. A driver saw it embedded in the road, a colorful, laminated piece of linoleum, fused into the asphalt. At first glance, it resembled a toy or a prank, but closer inspection revealed something more deliberate. Over time, the same tile, nearly identical in content, began showing up in New York City, Chicago, Boston, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and many more. Even international sightings occurred. One appeared in Santiago, Chile. The lettering was always similar, crude but intentional. The tiles were usually about the size of a license plate, made from layers of linoleum and tar paper, pressed into the street with some sort of adhesive. Most would eventually wear down under tires and weather, but new ones kept appearing year after year. Who was placing them? And what did the message mean? The content of the tiles is where the mystery deepens. The phrase Toynbee idea is believed to refer to Arnold J. Toynbee Tiles. They appeared silently, with no warning, no announcement, and for many years no explanation. Mysterious tiles, embedded directly into the asphalt of busy city streets. Hundreds of them spread across more than 24 cities in the United States, and even a few international locations. Always made from the same strange material, linoleum and asphalt compound. Always pressed flat into the pavement. And always bearing some version of the same eerie message. Toynbee idea in Kubrick's 2001 Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter. For decades, commuters stepped over these cryptic words without understanding, or even noticing, the message beneath their feet. The mystery of the Toynbee Tiles is one of the strangest unsolved urban puzzles of the 20th century. A blend of street art, fringe science, science fiction, and obsessive secrecy. It's a story that crosses genres, cities, and generations, and its origin is as strange as its message. The earliest known tile appeared in Philadelphia sometime in the early 1980s. A driver saw it embedded in the road, a colorful, laminated piece of linoleum, fused into the asphalt. At first glance, it resembled a toy or a prank, but closer inspection revealed something more deliberate. Over time, the same tile, nearly identical in content, began showing up in New York City, Chicago, Boston, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and many more. Even international sightings occurred. One appeared in Santiago, Chile. The lettering was always similar, crude but intentional. The tiles were usually about the size of a license plate, made from layers of linoleum and tar paper, pressed into the street with some sort of adhesive. Most would eventually wear down under tires and weather, but new ones kept appearing year after year. Who was placing them? And what did the message mean? The content of the tiles is where the mystery deepens. The phrase Toynbee idea is believed to refer to Arnold J. Toynbee, a British historian and philosopher who, in the mid-20th century, wrote extensively about the cyclical rise and fall of civilizations. His work wasn't pseudoscientific, it was academic and widely respected. But Toynbee also speculated, in passing, about the nature of human consciousness, the soul, and the idea of reviving the dead through science. Then there's the mention of Kubrick's 2001, almost certainly a reference to Stanley Kubrick's film 2001, A Space Odyssey. A haunting, cerebral film where humanity evolves through contact with mysterious alien monoliths, and a man is reborn into a star child after a surreal death and rebirth sequence near Jupiter. The final part of the tile, Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter, seems to suggest a theory that human beings, or at least human souls, can be revived or reborn somewhere near Jupiter. That death is not final, and that through a blend of history, science fiction, and technology, resurrection is possible. It's not a coherent scientific theory, but it reads like the manifesto of a believer, someone deeply committed to an esoteric worldview and determined to broadcast it. As the tiles gained attention in the late 1990s and early 2000s, amateur investigators began to hunt for the person behind them. Some tiles included additional text in the margins, long, rambling monologues about media conspiracies, Soviet mind control, and the suppression of the Toynbee idea. One recurring accusation was directed at a specific television network. The author believed it had tried to steal or silence the message. The deeper people looked, the stranger the trail became. Some researchers pointed to a Philadelphia man named James Morasco, who had published letters to local newspapers in the early 1980s discussing the Toynbee idea and his belief in resurrection via Jupiter. But Morasco died in 2003, and by that time, most of the tiles were still appearing. Even stranger, it was later discovered that James Morasco may not have been a real name at all, but a pseudonym. Multiple phone numbers tied to Morasco allegedly connected to the same South Philly address. Neighbors recalled a reclusive man who covered his windows with steel sheeting and built strange radio antennas on his roof. Another clue came from shortwave radio enthusiasts, who reported hearing a man in Philadelphia broadcasting bizarre monologues in the early 1990s. Mariana's web. There are parts of the internet you can't Google. This most people understand. Beneath the surface web, the portion indexed by search engines, lies the so-called deep web, academic databases, personal email inboxes, corporate intranets, banking systems, and other non-public content. Then comes the dark web, accessible only via special tools like Tor, where anonymity is valued and criminal marketplaces, whistleblower sites, and dissident forums operate in the shadows. But what if there's something even deeper? A level below even the dark web, so obscure, so secretive, that it defies all conventional access methods? This is the myth of Mariana's web, a supposed level 8 of the internet that exists beyond comprehension, wrapped in mystery, fear, and speculative fiction. And yet, no one has ever proved it exists. The name Mariana's Web is derived from the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans, nearly 7 miles below the surface of the Pacific. The metaphor is clear. Just as the trench represents the most inaccessible part of our physical world, Mariana's Web is said to be the deepest, most hidden layer of the digital one. According to the lore, which is often passed around internet forums, digital conspiracy boards, and fringe YouTube channels, the web has multiple levels. Level 0 to 2, surface and shallow web. Everything you can access via Google. Level 3 to 4, standard deep web. Academic records, internal sites, forums behind logins. Level 5, the early layers of the dark web. Level 6 to 7, where illegal markets, political secrets, and dangerous content are said to reside. Level 8, Mariana's Web, the deepest layer of all. But here's the key issue. There is no technical basis for this classification. There is no universal agreement among cybersecurity experts or technologists that such levels exist, let alone that they are numbered this way. The system appears to be an invention, a storytelling device, a myth layered on top of real digital infrastructure. Still, the stories about Mariana's Web persist, and they only get stranger. In online circles, Mariana's Web is said to require quantum computing to access, machines that, for most people, are still the stuff of science fiction. Some versions of the myth claim that artificially intelligent gatekeepers defend it, allowing access only to those deemed worthy or chosen. Others describe Mariana's Web as a place where lost knowledge is stored. Ancient texts, suppressed technologies, even proof of alien contact. A few claim it holds the records of global conspiracies, or that it is run by an unknown organization that predates the internet itself. Then there are the more symbolic interpretations, suggesting that Mariana's Web is less of a network and more of a state of consciousness. That it's not something you can access, but something that reveals itself to you once you're digitally or philosophically prepared. It's part digital Atlantis, part modern-day Necronomicon. The myth likely began circulating in the early 2010s, primarily on Reddit, 4chan, and deep web forums. At first, it was presented in the context of fictional maps of the internet, colorful charts claiming to show all 8 levels, each progressively darker and stranger. These maps looked impressive, intricate, convincing, but they were entirely made up. They were not technical diagrams. No official documentation has ever validated them. But their presentation, their pseudoscientific style, combined with exotic terms like polymeric faults or closed-shell systems, made them feel plausible to those unfamiliar with the underlying technology of the web. Even more interestingly, the absence of verifiable information became part of the allure. Of course, there's no evidence. Believers would argue. If there were, it wouldn't be Mariana's Web. It became a digital Ouroboros, a self-protecting myth. From a cybersecurity standpoint, Mariana's Web doesn't hold up. The internet is not a vertical structure with secret levels. It's a network of networks, a graph of connections, built on layered protocols but not in a way that conceals vast hidden realms unless someone physically builds them. The deep and dark terminology is metaphorical, not architectural. That said, there are closed systems, classified networks operated by governments or militaries. But they're not some occult layer buried under Tor. They're physically separate systems, protected by firewalls, air gaps, and strict access controls. In other words, if something like Mariana's Web exists, it wouldn't be part of the public internet at all. But myths like this aren't about feasibility. They're about possibility, and that's what keeps the idea alive. The Mariana's Web myth has become a kind of digital campfire story. A tale we tell to remind ourselves that there are still unknowns. That even in the age of instant information, there might be something out there we've never seen. A last corner of the digital world untouched by surveillance, monetization, and noise. It's a reflection of our fears. About control, about the limits of knowledge, about secrets kept from us. And also of our hope that maybe, just maybe, there's a place online that still feels truly hidden. In that way, Mariana's Web is less of a mystery and more of a mirror. It shows us what we want the internet to be: infinite, layered, full of forbidden truths, and what we fear it might become. A place where the deepest truths are buried so well, we'll never reach them again. Mortis.com. It began quietly. In the early 2000s, long before most internet mysteries went viral, a handful of users stumbled across a website called Mortis.com. The page was barren. A blank white screen. No text, no images, just a single login box requesting a username and password. No clues, no context, just silence behind a locked door. Most would have ignored it, but for those with a certain kind of curiosity, it was impossible to resist. What was behind the wall? Who built it? And why was it even online? Back then, domain records were more accessible and internet sleuths began digging. Mortis.com had been registered in the mid-1990s, during the very dawn of the public web. But the name attached to the domain was generic. The hosting service was standard. There was no indication of who owned it, or even whether it was still being maintained. But the real intrigue came when someone noticed that the site had been online for years, and had never changed. The same login box, the same blank page, unmoving, unwavering. It was like an abandoned building in the middle of a busy city. No activity but never taken down. Just there. And the name, Mortis, Latin for death. That didn't help ease any minds. Over time, Mortis.com took on a strange aura. People began speculating. Was it an encrypted Dropbox for a government agency? A forgotten Cold War relic? A vault of illegal data? Or something darker? A digital tomb, perhaps, where dangerous knowledge was sealed away. But unlike other internet mysteries, Mortis had no visuals, no ARG trail, no flashy symbolism. Just absence. And yet that absence made it feel more threatening than any horror site ever could. Attempts to brute force the login failed. The form accepted input but returned nothing. No error message, no redirect. Just a flicker as if the site had registered the attempt, then dismissed it. Some claimed that after multiple failed logins, their IP addresses were blacklisted. Others believed they had been silently tracked. Whether true or not, the idea added a sense of danger. That this wasn't just a wall, it was a trap. Then came the rumors. Someone said they accessed the server headers and found references to strange file names. Long strings of randomized characters that didn't follow any standard naming conventions. Another claimed the site used a military-grade encryption certificate. A few said Mortis.com was linked to secure networks usually associated with classified data. But again, no proof. No screenshots. Just whispers in dark corners of the web. What made it worse was that no one ever claimed to own it. Not once in all the years it was online did a person step forward to say, "Yes, I built that." In the internet age, where everything leaves a fingerprint, Mortis.com was sterile. Digital white noise. The myth grew. Some believed Mortis was part of a dead man's switch, a program that would activate and release sensitive information if certain people failed to log in at scheduled times. Others thought it was a portal for private intelligence networks, or a digital message in a bottle drifting through cyberspace for someone who never arrived. More fringe theories followed. That the site was a CIA honeypot, that it stored blackmail data, that it contained the true contents of the Voynich manuscript, decoded and encrypted in binary, that it was part of the same shadowy web as Cicada 3301. But all of these were theories. The site itself remained mute for nearly 2 decades. Then, without warning, Mortis.com disappeared. Sometime around the early 2010s, the site went offline. No announcement. No expiration notice. The domain remained registered, but the page simply stopped responding. Where once there was the eerie login form, now there was only a timeout. Gone. No archive service ever captured the site properly. Even screenshots are rare, and those that do exist seem almost too clean, like the memory of a dream that can't be trusted. But its absence only increased the myth. The disappearance became part of the story, like a ghost vanishing at sunrise. And so, Mortis.com became a cautionary monument, not of what's on the internet, but what lies under it. It showed that a mystery doesn't need visuals, narratives, or puzzles to be effective. Sometimes just existing in silence is enough. The site left no content, no direction, and no trail. but its legend has endured for decades. In an online world dominated by noise, Mortis whispered nothing, and that was the loudest signal of all. The Wyoming Incident. It was late at night in the quiet town of Niobrara County, Wyoming. In 2006, when television still held its grip on rural America, a group of viewers tuned in to their local broadcast expecting the usual late-night programming. A sports recap, maybe the local news, or just reruns playing in the background as they drifted off to sleep. Instead, they got something else. Something they were never supposed to see. The channel abruptly cut out. No warning, no static, just a sharp flicker, and then it began. What appeared was a black screen, then a burst of high-pitched tones. White text flickered briefly. "You will see such pretty things." Then it vanished, replaced by strange, surreal footage of distorted faces, unsettling audio glitches, and cryptic phrases flashing between frames. The broadcast lasted only a few minutes, but for those who saw it, that was enough. They described feeling physically unwell while watching it: headaches, dizziness, nausea. Some reported feelings of paranoia, others intense emotional discomfort, as if something in the signal itself was wrong on a level deeper than just visuals and sound. The Wyoming Incident had made its mark. At first, many assumed it was a hoax. A local teenager playing with signal jammers, maybe, or someone testing experimental visuals late at night. But as the footage began to circulate online, it became clear that no one could identify its source. Clips of the broadcast began appearing on obscure forums. People dissected them frame by frame. They noted that many of the messages flashed too quickly to read consciously, some just a fraction of a second long. Phrases like, "You cannot hide forever," "We stand at the door," "There is nothing wrong with your television," and perhaps the most chilling, "We will be with you soon." The faces in the video were just as strange. All male, all frozen in expressions that didn't quite make sense. Pain, confusion, sometimes joy, but all subtly off. Their features warped by compression or deliberate distortion. Some stared into the camera, others twitched or blinked too slowly. It looked like real footage, but edited, altered, poisoned somehow. The visuals were accompanied by a droning, unstructured sound, somewhere between a malfunctioning modem and a heartbeat. Underneath the noise, occasional whispering or mechanical voices could be heard, though their words were indecipherable. It was television, but broken, familiar and wrong at the same time. Investigators attempted to find the source. Official FCC records had no report of interference in that region during the alleged time. Local stations denied any connection. There was no indication from cable companies of unauthorized access. Yet dozens of viewers described the same thing, the same faces, the same messages, the same effect. For some, it caused only confusion, but others claimed they experienced lasting symptoms. Recurring headaches, nightmares, heightened sensitivity to sound. A few even described dreams where they saw the faces again, speaking now, but with mouths that didn't move right, as if the broadcast had planted something. Theories began to spread. Some suggested the Wyoming Incident was a psychological experiment, a form of subliminal testing to see how people responded to unstructured stimuli. The rapid cuts, flashing words, discordant sounds, all elements known to provoke certain emotional states. Others believed it was something more sinister, a failed government mind control signal, a leaked communication meant for someone else, a beacon from a clandestine organization using public television to broadcast codes hidden in noise. Then there were those who went further still, proposing that the signal didn't originate from Earth at all, that the faces weren't human, but simulacra of humanity created by something trying to imitate it, something learning, testing, observing. But amidst all the speculation, one detail remained constant. No one has ever taken credit. No artist came forward, no hackers revealed themselves. The footage exists, but its origin is a void. And despite efforts to reproduce or explain it, nothing since has matched the eerie precision of the original broadcast. Over time, the Wyoming Incident faded into digital legend. The clips still exist, uploaded, remixed, analyzed endlessly. But like all real mysteries, the further you dig, the less you find. It's as if the signal was meant to be seen once, then disappear, like a coded message for a sleeper agent who no longer remembers they were asleep. It was not a puzzle, not an ARG, not an art project. It was a broadcast, one that should not have been. iloviebes.com, ARG. It began with a jar of honey. In 2004, a mysterious package was sent to a group of gaming journalists. Inside, a plain glass jar filled with honey. Embedded within was a small piece of paper, partially melted, partially hidden, with a cryptic message and a single URL, iloviebes.com. At first glance, the website appeared to be nothing more than a quaint blog about beekeeping, maintained by a woman named Margaret. It was full of personal anecdotes, tips about hives, and photos of garden landscapes. But within days, the site began to break. Images glitched. Text was overwritten by code. Sections of the blog were taken over by fragmented messages, seemingly written by something or someone else. The system is under duress. One entry read, "Network intrusion detected." What once was a quiet corner of the internet had become the entry point for something far stranger. What followed was one of the earliest, most ambitious, and most reality-bending alternate reality games, ARGs, ever conceived. To understand I Love Bees, one must first understand what it wasn't. It wasn't a game in the traditional sense. There were no menus, no characters to control, no visible interface. There were only fragments, websites, GPS coordinates, payphone numbers, scrambled audio files, emails, and phone calls. It was a story hidden inside the real world, unfolding across continents and months. The only way to play it was to piece it together, to chase signals, solve riddles, decode transmissions, and, above all, collaborate. At the heart of this evolving digital riddle was a scattered AI. Players soon learned that the strange behavior on the iloviebes.com website was caused by a corrupted artificial intelligence, a construct displaced from another time and reality. The AI was fractured, its memory fragmented, and it was desperately trying to communicate. But this wasn't just science fiction roleplay. This was designed carefully. As weeks passed, new layers emerged. A countdown appeared, with a date, August 24, 2004. As the countdown neared zero, hundreds of payphone locations across the United States were published on the site, with specific times. Players who answered these calls were given audio fragments, pieces of a larger story, and sometimes even puzzles embedded within the messages. This was no longer just a website. This was a coordinated global event. The story itself, once uncovered, was layered and complex. It took place in the 26th century, the same universe as Halo, though this was never explicitly stated at first. The AI calling out from iloviebes.com was named Melissa, and she had been accidentally uploaded to a 21st century website after a military experiment in the future had gone wrong. Melissa was not alone. She was being hunted by other AIs, by digital constructs, by the protocols of a future war. And as she tried to recover her identity, she leaked her memories to those listening. Those memories came as voice logs, moments of fear, of resistance, of spacefaring soldiers in battle, of a human colony on the brink of invasion. These audio logs were drip-fed to players through phone calls, embedded code, and encrypted files. They painted a haunting image of a future in crisis, a war with an alien force, and the fragility of intelligence, artificial or otherwise. But to unlock them, players had to show up in person, often in the middle of the night, at payphones in isolated corners of the world. And they did. Hundreds of them. Students, programmers, gamers, journalists, coordinating online, forming groups, assigning locations, and reporting back on forums. When a call came, a robotic voice would ask a trivia question or request a password. Correct answers would grant a new fragment. Incorrect ones could delay the story. It was the internet weaponized into a global puzzle box. What made I Love Bees so powerful wasn't just the scope. It was the way it blurred the boundary between the fictional and the real. There were no loading screens, no indicators that said, "This is part of the game." The website looked real. The phone calls were real. The people answering them were real. The only fiction was the narrative, embedded like a virus into the everyday world. The creators, a team of writers and designers working in secret, used a technique called pervasive storytelling. They embedded their fiction so deeply into reality that it became indistinguishable from truth. Characters emailed players. Hidden web domains opened only under precise conditions. One segment required participants to hack into a fictitious military terminal, a moment that tested ethical boundaries as much as narrative ones. And yet, despite its sprawling complexity, I Love Bees was not chaotic. It was orchestrated, a kind of digital theater in which every participant unknowingly became an actor. Over the months, the story evolved. Players grew to know the characters. A brave girl named January, a disoriented AI, a military pilot, a shadowy threat. And in the final phase, when all fragments were recovered, the narrative concluded, not with fanfare, but with a quiet resolution. Melissa was stabilized. The system rebooted. The world, both real and imagined, moved on. Behind the scenes, the mystery had been commissioned as a viral marketing campaign for the upcoming release of Halo 2. But calling it mere marketing would miss the point. I Love Bees became a landmark not because of what it promoted, but because of what it achieved. It proved that the internet could be more than just a medium for games. Could be the game. Could carry a story not through exposition, but through participation. Could unite strangers in the pursuit of meaning. And in the years since, its legacy has only grown. ARGs today trace their lineage back to it. Developers study it. Communities remember it. And fragments of the Illubees code are still archived, examined like ancient scrolls. No single player ever saw the full picture. But together, across cities, across time zones, they completed something extraordinary. Some mysteries live in the dark corners of the internet. Others live in plain sight, in a jar of honey, on a broken blog, and in the voice of an AI calling from the future. Ending. And now, as our journey through the web's deepest and strangest mysteries comes to a pause, I wonder, which of these stories stayed with you the most? Was it the eerie calm of an AI whispering from a forgotten website? The cryptic tiles on a city sidewalk? Or perhaps the channel that never truly explained itself? Tell me, which mystery do you think was real? And which one was just a game we all agreed to play? If you enjoyed wandering through the unknown with me, consider leaving a like. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read them all. And if you'd like to keep exploring the strange edges of the digital world, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with a fellow seeker of the strange. There are many more stories waiting. See you in the next one.